Week 4 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I looked at this week. The first guy, Ha-Sung Kim of the San Diego Padres. So Kim, he's been surprising so far in the early going here for this Padre team, and a guy very versatile as well for fantasy baseball. Second, third, and shortstop he qualifies on. So on the season so far for Kim, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, a stolen base, 13 runs scored, a 271 average, and a 364 on base percentage. So right here, he's going out there, and he's been playing every day over the last few games here. And right now, he's been a hot pickup over the last few days, available, picked up in 15% of fantasy leagues, but right now he's available still in 81% of leagues. The last few games here for Kim: April 26th at the Reds, 1 for 3, a homer, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. April 28th at Cincinnati, 3 for 4 with a run and 3 RBIs. April 29th at Pittsburgh, 2 for 4, a homer, 2 RBIs. April 30th at Pittsburgh, 1 for 4, and May 1st at Pittsburgh, 0 for 4. So right here, he's gone out there. He's showing some surprising power in the early going of the season. And if you need an infielder who's versatile, this is definitely a guy to go out there and get. And he's getting an opportunity right now for this Padre team. The next guy, Sheldon of the Oakland Athletics. I mentioned him last week as a pickup, and he's having a good week and a half here as News, and he's going to play every day. And another versatile guy, second and third base, he qualifies on the season: 2 home runs, 13 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 7 runs scored, a 328 average, and a 394 on base. So right here, so it seems like this Oakland Athletic team, they just keep finding players out of nowhere. And News, another guy as well, doing it. So the last few games here for him: April 24th versus Texas, 1 for 3. April 26th at San Francisco, 2 for 4 with an RBI, 2 stolen bases. April 27th at San Francisco, 0 for 4. April 29th versus Cleveland, 3 for 5, 3 RBIs. April 30th versus Cleveland, 1 for 3, a homer in that one. And May 1st versus Cleveland, 1 for 3. So it seems like he's getting a hit or 2 each game is News. He's available right now still in 77% of fantasy leagues, and he's getting an everyday opportunity. He's definitely producing, and if you need a second base or third base guy or even utility, he's definitely a good add this week. The next guy's Max Kepler of the Minnesota Twins. So Kepler, we know he's a good power hitter, but he got off to a slow start the first 3 weeks of the season, but now he's starting to get things going in the power department, and his batting average has jumped up as well on the season here for Kepler. 5 home runs, 11 RBIs, 8 runs scored, a stolen base, 258 batting average, and a 372 on base. So right here, the numbers are definitely panning out. He's been added in 15% of fantasy leagues this week here, but right now, 71% of leagues he's still available in. So the last few games here for Kepler: April 24th versus the White Sox, 2 for 3. April 26th versus Detroit, 2 for 4, a homer, 3 RBIs. April 27th versus the Tigers, 2 for 3, 2 homers, and 2 RBIs. April 28th versus Detroit, 0 for 4. April 29th at Tampa, in that one, 0 for 3. April 30th versus at Tampa, 2 for 2, a homer, 3 RBIs. And May 1st at Tampa, 1 for 4 with a run and a rib. So he's definitely producing. He's definitely showing the powers, Kepler. And this is a guy, he could easily hit 25, 30 home runs, in my opinion. So if you need some power and a guy who's going to play every day for a pretty good Minnesota Twin ball club so far, I would definitely give Kepler an ad this week. The next guy, Wilmer Flores of the San Francisco Giants. Flores, he's been a hot and cold player throughout his career. There's weeks where he's on fire and then weeks where he doesn't do much, but he's definitely versatile as well for fantasy, qualifying at first, second, and third. So on the season, 2 home runs, 12 RBIs, 11 runs scored, a 282 batting average, and a 350 on base. So his on base is pretty good. His strikeouts are low, and even last season they were low, only striking out 56 times in 389 at-bats. And he's getting an everyday opportunity as well for this Giant team. So Flores, he's turned out to be a decent player in his career, even though I know he's been on a couple teams the last few seasons with the Mets, Diamondbacks, and the Giants, but he might have found a home here with San Francisco. So the last few games here for Wilmer: April 25th at the Brewers, 0 for 3 with a run. April 26th versus Oakland, 2 for 4, a homer, 4 RBIs, 2 runs scored. April 27th versus Oakland, 0 for 4. April 29th versus Washington, 3 for 5. April 30th versus Washington, 0 for 2 with a run. And May 1st versus Washington, 0 for 4 with a run and a rib. So right here, like I mentioned, he's going to be a guy that's going to be inconsistent at times, but he's going to be an everyday player. And he's a guy that definitely puts the ball in play so anything can happen. So right now he's available is Flores, still in 72% of fantasy leagues. And I would give him an ad this week, especially with his versatility and everyday positioning. The next guy, Santiago Espinal of the Toronto Blue Jays. So he's pretty much come out of nowhere, is Espinal this season. He qualifies at second and third base as well on the season. 2 home runs, 10 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 7 runs scored, 261 average, and a 325 on base percentage. So he's another guy that's perfect in this Toronto Blue Jay lineup, batting anywhere from 7th to 9th here, where you just plug him in, and he's versatile, and a guy who's going to score runs and get on base at a decent clip. April 26th versus Boston, 3 for 3, a run, 2 RBIs. April 27th versus Boston, 0 for 1. April 28th versus Boston, 1 for 4 with a stolen base in that one. April 29th versus Houston, 2 for 5. April 30th versus Houston, 0 for 3. And May 1st versus Houston, 1 for 3 with an RBI. So Espinal, he's going to be more of a stolen base and a run-scoring guy, even though the 2 home runs are a little bit surprising. After last season, he had 2 home runs in 222 at-bats. So maybe this year he worked on the power a bit, but he's got a lot of good protection as well in this lineup, where pitchers don't really seem that Espinal's a power threat compared to all the big bats in this Blue Jay lineup. So right now, he's been added in 17% of fantasy leagues over the last week, but right now he's still out there in 78% of fantasy leagues, and he's a good ad this week. The next guy is Jimenez of the Cleveland Guardians. Jimenez, he was the big prospect traded in that Francisco Lindor trade with the New York Mets from last season to this Cleveland Guardian team. So right here on the season, Jimenez so far 2 home runs, 11 RBIs, a 340 average, and a 347 on base percentage. So right here, he's a free swing and no doubt about it. But he's always been a guy that's put the ball in play and not striking out a lot. 12 times so far this season here for Jimenez. So right now, he's available in 91% of fantasy leagues. He also qualifies at short and second, and he's playing pretty much every day as well of late. April 25th, the Angels 0 for 3. April 26th at the Angels 0 for 3. April 27th at the Angels 2 for 4. April 29th at Oakland 3 for 4, a homer, 4 RBIs. April 30th at Oakland 1 for 4, run and a rib. And May 1st at Oakland 2 for 5 with a run and a rib. So right here, Jimenez, he's not going to be a power guy, but he's a slap hitter with some decent speed and a guy who could get on base and score some runs for this Cleveland Guardian team. So right now, if you need a versatile player and a guy who could go out there and help you at utility or even in the middle infield, he's not a bad ad this week, is Jimenez. The next guy is Brandon Marsh of the Los Angeles Angels. I mentioned Marsh as an ad last week, and a lot of people did go out there and get him, adding him in 24% of leagues over the last week. But right now, he's still available in 46% of leagues. On the season here for Marsh, 2 home runs, 15 RBIs, 7 runs scored, 3 stolen bases, a 286 average, and a solid 354 on base percentage. So Marsh, the only problem with him is he's a guy that strikeouts a lot, especially in his last 2 ball games. He struck out 7 times on the last few games here for Marsh. April 26th versus Cleveland, 1 for 3 with a rib. April 27th versus Cleveland, 1 for 4 with a stolen base. April 28th versus Cleveland, 3 for 4 with a run and a stolen base. April 29th at the White Sox, 0 for 5 with the 4 Ks. And then April 30th at the White Sox, 0 for 4 with 3 Ks. So right here, he's got to get things going again. And he had the day off in yesterday's ball game was Marsh. So maybe that day off will help him, and he'll get back to it because he's definitely a talented outfielder. He's a guy that could get on base, hit the ball, and he's a guy that hustles and plays hard each and every game. So I would definitely give him an ad this week here's Marsh, even though he's been slumping a little bit over the last few games. Is Nolan Gorman of the St. Louis Cardinals. So Gorman, he is not up in the major leagues yet here, but he's definitely tearing up the minors, and he has been added in 13% of fantasy leagues here is Gorman. So Gorman, a top 20 prospect in the major leagues. And right here, obviously one of the top prospects in the Cardinal system, if not the top prospects. So far, 10 home runs early on, but still no word of a promotion yet here for Gorman, but it's just a matter of time. He's a third baseman, I know, like Arenado is, but obviously with the DH here, you could move guys around or whatever the case may be, because right here, Gorman, with 10 home runs at AAA, this team could use another big bat with Goldschmidt and Arenado. And this Cardinal team, obviously, they're looking to have a big season here. So Gorman, he's going to be up at some point. And power like that is not going to not translate, in my opinion, to the major leagues. Maybe he'll be a high strikeout guy. But right here, Gorman, he's a guy, once he comes up, he's going to have to play every day for this Cardinal team, in my opinion. And obviously with the DH here, it could be a little bit easier, even though you don't want a young player just getting into that DH role. Maybe they move him to a different position. Who knows the deal? But Gorman eventually is going to come up, and he's going to be a big-time power hitter for fantasy owners in this Cardinal team. So right now, available in 70% of fantasy leagues. And if you have an NA spot, I definitely would go out there and get him and stash this guy, because once he's up, he's going to be a premier prospect on fantasy teams. The next guy is Eric Hosmer of the San Diego Padres. So Hosmer, they wanted to trade him in the offseason and get his contract off the books. And right now, Hosmer, he's having a good season here. 3 home runs, 14 RBIs, a monster 389 batting average, and a 457 on base. So right here, San Diego is probably happy they didn't trade Hosmer away here. They need the offensive production. Luke Voigt is on the injured list. Obviously, Tatis hasn't played yet. And right now, he's helping this team in a big way, is Hosmer here, where they've won their last 5 out of 6 ball games. April 26th at Cincinnati, 2 for 3, a homer, 3 RBIs. April 27th at Cincinnati, 2 for 2, a homer, 2 RBIs. April 28th at the Reds, 2 for 4, a run and a rib. April 29th at Pittsburgh, 0 for 3 with a run. April 30th at Pittsburgh, 1 for 4, a homer, 3 RBIs. And May 1st at Pittsburgh, 1 for 4. So he's going out there. He's hitting the ball well as Hosmer. Still pretty decent on defense as well. But this guy's available in 40% of fantasy leagues, and he's one of the hottest hitters in the game right now. And you got to go out there and get him. And if he fizzles out, then you just drop him back, obviously, to the waiver wire. And the final guy I looked at this week's Austin Hayes of the Baltimore Orioles. So Austin Hayes, I've mentioned him over the last couple seasons as a guy that could get hot and show some power as an ad. And last season, he did hit 22 home runs with 71 RBIs. And so far this season, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, 6 runs scored, a 293 average, and a 376 on base percentage. So right here, Austin Hayes, pretty good batter, a guy with some pop, like I mentioned. And Baltimore, we know they don't have much on that roster, but this guy's one of the bright spots. He's available in 55% of fantasy leagues, and he's good as a bench hitter that you can use occasionally in your lineup, or a utility guy. So April 24th at the Angels, 1 for 4, homer, 2 RBIs. April 26th at the Yankees, 1 for 3, a homer, 3 RBIs. April 27th at the Yankees, 0 for 3. April 28th at the Yankees, 4 for 5, a run and a rib for him. April 29th versus Boston, 2 for 3. April 30th versus Boston, 1 for 4. And May 1st versus Boston, 0 for 5. So right here, Hayes, if you need outfield, and like I mentioned, an extra hit on your team, he's a pretty decent ad this week. But out of all the guys I've mentioned in this video, he's probably the last guy I would add on my roster this week. So that's a few hitters I look to add here for week 4 of the fantasy baseball season.